Hey there, it's the Slya. Welcome to my best video yet, and potentially my best performance in Injustice 2 Mobile yet. Man, I am kicking it today. I even beat Shao Kahn in MK Trilogy using Unmasked Sub-Zero, which is a whole level of super crazy achievement on its own. But whoops, that is for another audience. Now this is a video of all my one-shots in Heroic7 Tier 5 of the Kingdom of Madness solo raid, like my challenge from other raids, all done in one session, and no teams repeated. This video has been split into chapters listed in its description and also set up for navigation in the YouTube panel for your ease of reference. We start with the Batman one-shot, then at 3 minutes 4 seconds my fight against Atrocitus commences. At 6 minutes 33 seconds my one-shot of EPI commences. Then at 10 minutes 18 seconds we have the best fight of the night, Ascended Manta finally one-shotting a Heroic7 Tier 5 boss without Raiden or Zatanna boss Harley, and at 13 minutes 24 seconds we see the fight with Robin King. The rewards and a bonus video of the 43-second one-shot of Heroic7 Tier 4 boss BWL start from the 16 minutes 23 second mark. So as noted, we have started with my first fight today, which was the first time I one-shot this critical and lethal attack-resistant boss Batman. Last time round my Loa was not ascended and BWTD always messes this pip for me, so this time I tried Raven Dark Metal cards, Raiden Beta and SGL Raid Artifact, and as you will see it worked wonders. My Loa should have taken this guy out with DMC, but I saved LOE for Atrocitus later, and although BWTD is generally useless for me, she is good at finishing off the final bosses of raids, so instead of using Raven and Raiden on boss Robin King like last time, I used them here, instead of risking messing up the one-shot of this boss with BWL. I am not too obsessed by the fact that this didn't finish quick because it is quite a tough one-shot. Alright. See you in the introduction of my next fight in this video in a few minutes.
There's no place to hide.
So here I used my max ascended League of Anarchy team along with Zatanna. In my last run of Heroic7 I one-shot this boss using Loa without raid-specific artifacts, supported by Batman with Gemstone instead of Zatanna. Now this boss is OP, although that was an easy one-shot. It was exciting because I had to stop Atrocitus from doing his super. Here this time, instead of using Batman Gemstone as I needed him elsewhere, I added Zatanna Puppet to help the one-shot. Normally after Ascension Loa don't need Raven, and for some bosses don't need Zatanna or Go SSG either. But this time instead of God Killer I put a raid-specific artifact, the Scythe, on EPI just in case. Which meant that Atrocitus' super did end up killing Zatanna, but fortunately she built up her damage buff, albeit she didn't do any percentage damage by then. This is critical for this boss, and a must remember that not only is he critical attack resistant but also does high damage. And even if you blind him with Puppet you may not be able to tank his super unless you have someone who applied God Killer. But if you have to tank the super, ensure it is done by the third character, and not EPI or HBHU. Luckily I had the presence of mind to ensure that. Otherwise this would have been a disaster that would have effed up this video. I was almost tempted to skip a raid-specific artifact like I did when I had a Gemstone user instead of a Puppet user for support, but good thing I didn't, even at max ascension once Zatanna died early, and you couldn't keep Puppet active. Max ascended EPI with a max raid artifact, and max ascended HBHQ max DMC took a good amount of time to finish him off. This was just to show that you can finish this boss with free-to-play artifacts. Ideally you need some defense reduction or power stealing artifact to ensure this guy doesn't do super before your third character builds their buff, and then let the third character tank the super. That way, even though my APGK, HBHQ DMC and Silverbat Gemstone team was OP and finished the fight quicker, if he had done a super and killed any of them, the one shot was gone. Alright, see you in the next fight. This is a routine Ascended Batman Ninja Batman team fight. I am impressed by this team. They even took out this lady despite her resistance. The key operative word is resistance, and the fact that resistance is not immunity. Whilst BNGG as a DD with beta and some beta teams might struggle with DOT resistance, we now know that the Batman Ninja team with Ascended Batman Ninja wearing beta can still one-shot this team with dot. However, a few days ago I used this team with Zatanna instead of BN Joker with the puppet, and her percentage reduction and damage buff had made it easier. But this time, since I used Zatanna with Loa, I took a risk and used BN Joker as the third character with puppet. Luckily it still worked, but as seen this time the one shot took longer, but good fight. Now see you in the introduction of the next fight in a few minutes.
Ready for more fun? Let nature run its course.
Oh yeah, this was the best fight of the night. I have plenty of videos and plenty of analysis of how to use Ascended Manta to one-shot 2 bill health bosses without using Raven or Zatanna, so I am not going to go over the basics here again. But one really awesome thing is that this is the first time my Ascended Manta Beta, CWW Raid Artifact and Ascended Silver Batman Gemstone team has one-shot a Heroic7 Tier 5 boss. Usually they one-shot up to Heroic7 Tier 3 and occasionally 4. This time I did have a max raid artifact on CWW. Also note that this boss is the easiest boss in this tier, and relatively easy for a Heroic7 Tier 5 boss. Normally Tier 5 bosses are tough, and all the other Heroic7 Tier 5 bosses in this raid are tough because 2 of them instead of 1 have critical attack immunity, and 1 has dot resistance. Usually Tier 5 bosses all have higher damage output, and higher undisclosed defense, as well as we saw in Ancient Judgment where some of my one-shots took much longer than they should have and bosses were doing higher damage than they should and had hidden defense passives. But in this raid, it is mistakenly perceived as being as high defense as the Rise of Krypton raid but isn't. Atrocitus does very heavy damage. The other 2 in this tier have buffs, but this lady here is surprisingly low defense for a Heroic7 Tier 5 boss. In my last Heroic7 run a few days ago I had beaten her with Justice League Cyborg Beta. With Raven's support of course. So that encouraged me to try this Ascended Manta team here, as this was the most likely place they would get results, and man they did, with 40 seconds to spare. This is a one-shot of the final boss of the raid, Robin King. Now he does have a hazard zone that follows him and reduces your health, and if your health is too low you don't do much damage. In the earlier tiers of the raid I missed a lot of one-shots against him as my characters weren't fully built. But whether you have a good roster with well-ascended damage dealers like I do, or whether you are a new player, I have some tricks for this boss which I will display here. Last time in my last run of Heroic7 I used Raven Puppet, Dr. Fate Raid Artifact and Raiden Beta. Given they are 8 or 9 stars, my Raiden's heavy damage allowed me to ignore the hazard. But this time I used my usual raid final boss team BWTD GK, Robin King Puppet, and JSGL Raid Artifact. Honestly I don't think this team is as good as people say it is, and I try avoiding using it. But this team and artifact combination somehow really works well for me in taking out the final boss of the raid, and it did so in Advent of Chaos, The Last Contract, and a couple of others as well. Batwoman the Drowned has the God Killer artifact, which is a free-to-play Last Contract artifact that disables opponent block and significantly reduces the boss's damage. I assume this would apply to the hazard zone damage too. Robin King with Puppet gets Puppet activated upon hazard activation, and can quickly do percentage health damage with his special 3. Besides, Robin King's specials were needed to disable any crit resistance, as well as increase the damage of this team. Finally, John Stewart Green Lantern buffs up BWTD's hazard damage as well as reduces the hazard secondary effects and hazard damage taken by the team. So we have both BWTD's God Killer and JSGL's hazard reduction passives working in conjunction here so that we did not need to do gymnastics around this idiot boss's hazard. It is interesting given that this raid's tier 5 is unusual given it has 2 critical attack immune sub-bosses and not one. Most people would have used both their LOA and BWTD teams before reaching this boss and used Raiden here instead. But like I said, I don't trust BWTD to one-shot sub-bosses, so I took the gamble of using Raiden there, as we saw in the beginning of the video. Anyway, this was a good one-shot. See you in the rewards screen and the bonus fight in a few minutes. So here we are. Pretty ordinary rewards for completing Heroic7 Tier 4 and V for the second time for sure and possibly the third. This is the bonus fight. I one-shot Heroic7 Tier 4 boss BWL. Now he has this passive wherein the first character loses health quickly, BTU gains power. The second character heals and takes less damage, but power drains quickly. Some people use Raiden here as well, or other teams wherein they carefully alternate tag-ins to ensure their support and damage dealers get power when they need it. However, a few days ago I one-shot this with Beast Boy, and now I'm using the same Beast Boy setup in this run of Heroic7 as well. I put Gorilla Grodd first. GG actually has a near pay-to-win Moonblade artifact which helps you recover health on swipe. Last time I used a Kondak artifact that prevents power stealing, but that didn't make much sense in terms of strategy, as it wouldn't impact the health reduction, but I wanted to test the artifact. So now for free-to-play players, even if you don't have an artifact that stops BNGG from losing health as he is starting the fight, try using a Kryptonian regeneration matrix if needed. Otherwise, once you get a few swipes and his passive in, power will build up from his lethal passive, and then the moment you tag in Beast Boy with Puppet, he will be able to do a special one before BWL's passive power steals from the person tagged in. This will activate Beastie's Puppet immediately with BNGG's debuffs in place, and you need to do any special you can to ensure you don't lose the Puppet's activation and infinite power. Because while the Puppet is active, it resists BWL's power steal. Then you need to ensure that you get close to BWL and keep on doing Beastie's Special 3, which is both his main way of doing damage as well as a way of stopping BWL from doing his specials and super. This was my fastest Beastie one-shot in a long time. That is it from my side. I really hope you enjoyed this video, some of my best fight performances to date, and all in one session, after which I spent a bit of time compiling and editing this video. So do let me know if you found this video useful, and do share your comments and strategies. Also, don't forget to hit the subscribe button.